Great day for the Orlando Magic. I know you guys have a lot of questions for our new coach, but before we get to that, I'd like to say first thank you to the DeVos family and Alex for allowing us to take the long, steady approach to this process. And I think it's very important that we go through it the right way so that we come out the right end. I think it's been written, but I know that a couple have asked. When John and I were last looking at a coaching search in Milwaukee about 5 years ago, one of the names that we stumbled upon, a guy who had never been a head coach before, was Steve Clifford. And we brought him in, and he blew us away. He was so prepared and passionate and really just thorough in every aspect about how he approaches player development, XOs, game management, organizational abilities, everything. And so we called his agent to request a second interview, and the next day the Charlotte Hornets signed him. So he didn't know, but he's been a marked man ever since that day. And I sit here 5 years later, and I'm thrilled to announce the next coach of the Orlando Magic, Steve Clifford.
Thank you, Jim. The players should be clapping there, DJ. So no, it's great to be here, and I want to start by thanking the DeVos family. We had a great meeting with them last night, and to be honest, it was it warms your heart to just spend time with them, and I forgot what a great ownership group they are, and that's where everything starts, as you know, in this league. I'm a firm believer that team chemistry starts with organizational chemistry, and that starts always with the ownership group. And last time I was here, they were so supportive and unbelievably committed to what we did. They have high expectations of how we all represent them off the court, and then also, which is fair, great expectations of what we do on the court, which is what this league is all about. So I want to start by thanking them. Next, I want to thank Jeff so much, and John and Alex for their confidence in me and the opportunity to come back here and be part of this organization again. I've had 18 great years in this league. I've enjoyed every year, but none more than the 5 years here. And it started with the working relationship on the basketball side, which I'm so convinced that I think the philosophy that Jeff has, that John has, that they gave to me is so much in line with what I believe. I believe this is going to be a great opportunity for me to not only do well as a head coach, but also grow and learn from them. And then just a bigger part of that was the relationship and the synergy, kind of chemistry, togetherness that the basketball side had with the business side before, which obviously, you know, Alex, Charlie, everybody, Jim was a big part of, and they're still here, and I believe that we can do that again. So I think it all starts with that. So it's great to be here, and I'm excited to get started.
Okay, we'll open it up for questions now. If you can please wait for a microphone and state your name and affiliation for those watching on Fox Sports Florida, Fox Sports Go, and OrlandoMagic.com.
Yeah, this one's for Jeff. Jeff, Magic have had a lot of turnover over the last 5 years in coaching. How important is it to establish some stability at that position?
I think it's crucial. It's seventh coach in 5 years, or I'm sorry, fifth coach in 7 years, and it's very important that we start to establish our identity, create a through line, and be able to build on something that doesn't get turned over every season. So that was a big part of what we were looking for as we went into this search, someone that we felt we could build and grow with and would have a long life philosophically and organizationally with the team.
Jeff, Josh Robbins, Orlando Sentinel. Why did the coaching search take as long as it did, and what specific qualities in Steve Clifford did you see and did you value?
You know, you think about all the different cycles and events that we go through the course of an NBA season, you know, things that we look for. You don't control the draft. You know, there's a deadline. There are agents controlling information on players, visits. You don't control the trade deadline. There's a date. There are other teams that have their own agendas, and they don't always make it easy on you. Very few times do you encounter a process that you as a team get to control. And this is perhaps the most important thing a team does in hiring a coach. And we needed to control this process to where we felt comfortable that we were making a hugely important decision for our organization and making the right one. And part of that is I want to thank John in the back of the room there, lurking in the back of the room, because I wore him out. You know, the same questions again and again and again and again, because I believe that's how you find the right answers, you know. And as we come through the whole process, we're here at the end, and I'm thrilled with the result. So a deliberate approach, interviewing people that are of interest. Sometimes you might have an interview with someone else that brings back another question about one of the other candidates. And so just to be very thoughtful and deliberate, there's just no reason to rush this. Let's get it right. So, you know, as to the qualities, you know, in Steve Clifford, I think it's very unique that you get to find someone who's philosophically aligned with you, who has a multi-skill kind of, what do they call them, Swiss Army knives, we call players with multi-skill sets, and also has a proven track record. So, you know, I'm not betting on something that I don't know. You know, Steve Clifford has proven himself to be an elite-level NBA coach, in addition to having great personal skills, player development abilities, all the organizational bullet points that we had hoped to address.
Coach, Dan Savage, OrlandoMagic.com. How much did your first stint in Orlando shape your coaching career, and how fondly do you look back on those times?
Oh, a great 5 years, and obviously, you know, playing in a final was, you know, that was the most exciting year I've ever had in coaching in the NBA. The next year, playing in the Eastern Conference Finals, you know, again, I believe we won 58 or 59 2 years in a row. Great group of players, very professional, very committed. You know, I love working for Stan. I love the staff. And then again, though, it started with the ownership and their commitment. And then I think, again, it was just such a great energy level throughout the city and the organization. So that part of it I enjoyed. The second part, frankly, and I don't think we get enough credit for this, is, you know, a lot of this 4 out, 1 in was started with that team. You know, we were one of the first teams that ever started playing 4 out. You know, that team really took place when Tony Battie hurt his shoulder. He was going to start at the 4, and when Rashard Lewis signed as a free agent, one of his big things was he didn't want to play the 4. He wanted to be a 3-man. I remember Stan brought him in. We were all holding his breath and told him, Rashard, if you'll play the 4, it's going to be hard for you, but I think we can be really good. And he said, hey, if that's what it's going to take to win, I'll play the 4. And it changed our whole time here. I mean, that was the move that set the tone. And then after that, you remember, we didn't play anybody that couldn't shoot threes. We were one of the first teams that did that. Dwight and Gortat rolling and everybody else spaced out. So, you know, it was a great lesson for all of us.
Jamie.
Steve, Jamie Say from News 6. Just wondering, from your experience leading the Hornets, facing the Magic, what's your opinion on the roster that you inherit right now?
I'm not going to back away from that question, but, you know, the old saying in the NBA, and it's so true, is you never know a player until you coach them. Now, I'm going to start to attempt to establish the right kind of relationships with these guys tomorrow or tonight. Because I want to get to know them. But there's a difference between, you know, being able to impact a player and just coaching him. I want to be able to impact each one of these guys in the right way. And they're all accomplished players. They're the best players in the world. And if you want to gain the right type of credibility so that you can have the right impact on them and the type of partnership where the two of you come to a common place on how they have to play well, and the team can function well when they're on the floor, I need to be up to speed and an absolute expert on their game. And I'm not that yet. I've coached against these guys here for a lot of years. I don't know them nearly the way I know Kemba Walker, Nick Batum, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. So this will start now. I'll get to know them. I'll be watching them and evaluating them. But you can't guess, in my opinion, my experiences, you can't guess in this league if you want to do a good job of leading them in the right direction. I don't guess. I'll be watching. We'll start to work together. I want their input, and then I'll give them mine. We won't always agree, okay? But it's way too early for me to start judging anything other than I do know, looking at it, health was a big problem this year. You know, you had a lot of good players miss a lot of games, and I know that just looking at the numbers. The other part, that's not good NBA coaching. I'm not going to sit here and guess by looking at some stat sheet and saying this guy's got to do this. But give me 5 or 6 weeks and ask me the question, and I will have a more definitive answer for you.
Coach Philip Rossman-Reich, Orlando Magic Daily. In the 6 years that since you were last here, you've obviously had a head coaching job in that time too. What have you learned as a coach and grown as a coach being in the lead chair and since that time you were here last?
I learned, you know, the year in LA was a great learning experience, to be honest. To have the opportunity to watch Kobe, watch Steve Nash, Pau Gasol, and their interaction with the other guys, along with Dwight and Metta, was one of the best years I've ever had in terms of learning and growing. I mean, when you're around great players, there's so much that you can learn that, you know, you can't read about or, you know, see. I mean, that was one of my favorite years of learning. In terms of a head coach, I think, you know, one of the things, frankly, is as much as anything else, is it's always going to get back to getting the most out of people. Having a way to play as a team that makes sense for this league. This league constantly changed. This year was different than last year. You have to be on top of that. A lot of study goes into it. But at the end of the day, as you're seeing in the playoffs, you know, Golden State came up big in the second half. Why? Two great players had the confidence level, knowledge of how they wanted to play to go off. And that's how normally it is. You know, people always talk about halftime adjustments. Watch these games. You know, a halftime adjustment is usually DJ Augustine was maybe 1 for 6 in the first half, and he went for 7 for 8 in the second. And so much of it is that connection from a coaching staff, an organizational standpoint, that the players know how they have to play, they're confident in themselves, and they go out and they play well. You need guys to do that. So trying to constantly find ways to more effectively communicate with not just the players but the other people that you're working with, to me, is one of the most important qualities you can have in any work type situation. I found that. Second thing, and it was where I failed this year, you can never take anything for granted. You know, we had gone to Charlotte. They'd been they were 30th in defense the year before we got there. We were top 10 the next 3 years. 2 years ago, we were actually 7th at the All-Star break, lost our backup center, struggled on our way in. And this year, we were, I think, like 17th or 18th. And looking at the numbers, I spent just as much time on the defense, but I felt we were going to be a great defensive team. And if we could be a top 10, 12 offensive team, which we end up 13th, I thought we could be right there. And I really believe that in some ways, maybe I took the defense for granted. Can't do that in this league. Every year, you have to start from scratch, as if you've never coached them before. We start the defense in training camp. You start with a stance. You start with individual defense. Then you go to help the same things they learned when they were in elementary school. There's no other way to do it. And we did do that this year when I look at it, but I don't think we're nearly, maybe in my mind, maybe I just wasn't determined enough, or I was more thinking offense. So I would say, as much as anything, those were the two things I learned.
Christian Brewy, WFTV, right here in the middle. Coach, a lot has been made about the turnaround you had in year one in Charlotte. You may have just touched on some of it, but when you look back at that, what was the key, and do you see maybe some things that you could have that happen here?
The key there, frankly, was the same key that will be here, which is what I'm going to talk to these guys about here in these next few days. It was committed players. I'll give you the best example is that year I coached Summer League, and I hadn't been a head coach before, so I coached Summer League, and we had 4 of our guys. We had just drafted Cody Zeller, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is in his second year, Jeffrey Taylor, and Biz. Biz was there, so they all played Summer League, and I remember when I first called Kemba was in New York, and I said, listen, I'm going to coach Summer League. I'd love to have you come down, watch the practices in the morning, and we're going to scrimmage more at night. So he said, no problem. And then he came down, and the day before we started, he said, hey, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do all the practices. So I said, well, in the mornings, we're just going to do the drills. He said, Steve, if we're going to win, I got to be on top of this stuff. He was the best returning player. And he practiced every drill, as the best returning player. He did every drill, every summer league, and we went 2 a day for like 5 days. He did all 10 of them. Every drill, he was the best player. He killed them in the scrimmages. And right then I knew that we had our leader, But as a group, those guys committed to a great summer. That's what we have to do. The off season is a time that you get ready for training camp, not in September. And the thing that we have to concentrate now on is not what our record was last year or anything else. This is a total reset for every player. But it's going to start with everybody having a good summer. And a good summer for Jonathan at his age is different than DJ at his age. He's got a better idea what he has to do to have a better offseason. He's been through it before. That's why he's an established player. But all of us, we have to have a plan for each guy that makes sense, and then the work that they put forth and we help them with and guide them through will set up our year. So as much as anything, our first year in Charlotte was set up June, July, August, and September as much as it was anything else.
Coach Adam Shadow from Fox 35. I think a lot of people look at you as kind of a young player development guy or somebody who's really good at that. Do you agree with that assessment, and is that something that you take pride in?
Well, I think like anybody else who's been an assistant in this, that's how you get your reputation. But I think that I'd also like to make this point about player development. Player development never stops. Like these 2 guys who are in the gym here, they're both, again, proven veteran NBA players. The best players in this league never stop finding ways to improve. They don't just stay in shape, they try to get in better shape. And look at the great ones. LeBron's gotten better every year. Gets better every year. I remember, again, being in LA, it was Steve Nash's second to his last year. He could only, because of his back issues, he could only work out about 20 minutes at a time. So in August that year, he went 3 times a day, 18 minutes a time. That's how precise he was with his workouts. And again, that's a guy who had been a league MVP. The best players, regardless of age. So player development never stops. Again, it's going to be different for veteran guys than it is younger guys. But again, it's player development is not separate from coaching. I think it's such a misnomer. The best coaches are good at player development because it's not just skills. It's not just shooting or dribble moves. Playing well is the skill part, the individual part, but just as big a part is then you have to know how you have to play so the team plays well when you're on the floor. And you have to be willing to do all of these things. Jeff and I were talking today about certain things. There's amount of toughness plays in grit that if you don't have it, you can only be so good in this league. There are guys that play for 6 or 7 years and maybe they score, but their pick and roll defense isn't good. Their rebounding numbers aren't good, and they change them. It should never change. It should never change. And that's the job of an organization, of a staff, to point that out and then work with these guys in a way that they know how, again, I'm going to say it over and over, play in a way that they play well and the team functions well when they're on the floor. And that leads to more winning.
Joe?
Coach Joe Kepner, WFTV. What do you remember about how 2012 ended with Dwight Howard, and what did you take away from how all of that played out?
That was the year he got hurt with his back. The last year?
His last year.
Well, I mean, he had surgery.
I just mean some of the stuff that happened besides the surgery with didn't exactly leave on great terms, and it was kind of the end of that sort of dynasty here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Listen, I like Dwight. I've got a great relationship with Dwight. He had a good year for us this year. Nobody in this league has spent more time with Dwight than I have. I went to LA with Dwight. I think that Dwight has great qualities. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. This league is difficult. These guys, all of them, they have people tugging at them in all different directions, and they're forced to make decisions all the time. And sometimes it's difficult to make the right one. But I'm more glass half full. You know what? Dwight was here. We went to the finals. He was our best player. He was a dominant player in this league. We went to an Eastern Conference player. He was our best player. He helped us go. We got here. This franchise hadn't won a playoff series, I think, for like 9, 10 years. We won one the first year, finals the second year, Eastern Conference finals the third year. He was our best player. I can remember driving home after watching him some nights saying, like, now this is a treat watching this guy play. So, everybody, I guess we all get to choose how we think about our past, and those are my memories of him here.
Mike?
Steve, Mike Bianchi, Orlando Sentinel. I'll ask you the same question I asked Jeff. You've seen the turnover in coaching in this organization since you guys left. How important is it to establish a program, have stability within the coaching part of it to build something?
Well, I think that every year, I think probably in every pro sport, right, you always look for external development, improvement in the offseason, and internal improvement. And obviously, continuity with the roster and continuity with your coaching staff is a big part of the internal improvement. These guys will all have a coach that they're, I don't know if you call it assigned to, or they'll work with more closely. And the relationship that they establish with that coach will be a big part of, again, how well they play the next year. Same thing, the head coach obviously has a big part with all that. But obviously your coach, the philosophy, the NBA, because of the rules, 24-second shot clock, there's not as many different ways to play, obviously, as there are in college. But there's, philosophically, coach to coach, there's major differences. So obviously the continuity part, so that they know how we're going to play. They know what's important to me. I know what's important to them. Continuity can only help.
Aaron Goldstone, SB Nation, Orlando Pinstripe Post. Coach, you know as well as anybody, you've been a head coach and an assistant coach in this league, how a strong staff is so important. The draft, Summer League coming up. How quickly are you going to move to build your staff, and has that already started, that process, reaching out to guys around the league that you've coached with?
So we're going to do the staff together, Jeff and John and I, and actually we're going to meet on that tomorrow. So today is, hang out with you guys and, get back to Orlando and everything like that. But we are organized, and we're going to start discussing that tomorrow.
Hey, Coach, Jamie Say again from News 6. I'm just wondering, how's your health? How are you feeling? And what happened this past season? Did that change your approach to working at all?
Really, I was fortunate in that we had a great team doctor, Dr. Garcia, who helped me a great deal. And then I worked with a neurologist, Dr. Jung, who was phenomenal. And as he told me the second day, you don't have to change the way you work, you have to change the way you live. And that's what I've done. So going through it was professionally the most difficult thing I've ever had to go through. It impacted our team in a bad way. I feel terrible about it. It's a hard thing for players to do, from going, with their coach, who I'd coached most of those guys for a long time, even though Steven Silas did a phenomenal job, but it's just different. Then I came back, and it impacted our season. There's no question about that. So professionally, it was hard. Now, personally, it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me. And what I've learned is two things. Number one, you need to sleep. No, you need to sleep. I had just worked on staffs since my first year in the NBA, where I worked with a lot of guys who had incredible work capacity, and we got in early and stayed late, and it's the way I lived for a long time. And then the second part of it is what you learn is, for me anyway, the way I could live and work at 51, 52, I could not do at 54, 55, and 56. Some people can. I've studied sleep. Some people are good forever. They don't have to sleep. For me, it didn't work out that way. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is modern medicine is incredible. I mean, I've learned so much about this sleep thing, but it only is good if you take advantage of it. And this wasn't something that just happened in September. This had been going on for a couple of years. The year before they made me do an MRI. And I just should have been more forthcoming with the doctors about, I guess, the level of significance of pain that I was having. But I just didn't, I just thought it'll be okay. It'll be okay. And just so you guys know, when you don't run back on defense, I still get headaches. So we got to be bad. Okay?
Christian Brewer, WFTV. Coach, any chance, or have you talked with Stan Van Gundy, and would there ever be the possibility of him coming on as an assistant coach for you?
Oh, man, I can't. Stan's twice as smart as me. He couldn't work for me. Stan's in Greece, actually, and so I texted with him this morning, and, I mean, he's, he was obviously, I mean, he's a mentor. He's one of my closest friends, and I'm not going to share the text, but, I mean, Stan's, we're very close, so, yeah, but he can't work for me. No, we can't do that.
Jeff, Adam Shadow, Fox 35 again. This is probably the quietest as far as leaks coaching search I've ever seen in the NBA. Did you take pride in that, and how much did you work on keeping that quiet?
It's just we just tried to do things the right way, and we try to respect the privacy and discretion of the people that we interviewed, and obviously wanted to keep our own deliberations private, because they change sometimes, and certain guys may have different aims and goals. So it's something that we strive to do, not just with our coaching search, but with all of our business. It's just this is a business where there are a lot of people that know what other guys are doing, and then there are different levels of accuracy to those rumors and innuendos. But by and large, teams that can kind of keep their business their own probably can win on the margins of not having to deal with external influences. And so, it is something that we set out to do across the board. And obviously it only works if the other people feel that way as well. So, Coach Clifford and a lot of the people that we met with, were discreet, and they wanted it that way, and we wanted it that way, and that's just the way it worked out.
Any final questions? What, Mike?
Mike Bianchi, Orlando Sentinel. Jeff, did what Steve did when he took over Charlotte, took over a struggling team, and turned it around immediately, did that have an impact on you wanting to hire him here? Mike, I would actually hearken back to your first question to answer this one. For sure, a coach that can come in and impact a team will raise eyebrows. But what really attracted us is the long haul, and that's just that Steve was able to establish himself as an upper echelon coach. I can throw numbers at you that, his teams all 5 years led the league in defensive rebounding. They committed the fewest turnovers. The bottom line is, when you play a Steve Clifford team, you have to beat them. They don't beat themselves. And over the course of 5 years, that's what the real attraction was.
Max Fay, Associated Press. Coach, what timetable do you see for the turnaround of this team?
Well, I don't think you ever put a limit on a team, to be honest with you. And again, I think I know some of these guys well. I'm no expert right now on our roster. That's for these next few weeks, and that takes study. And then coming up with a team game that will bring out the strengths of the best players, and establish a way we can be good on both offense and defense. So those are the decisions that will be made in these next upcoming weeks. But I know this is, you don't put limits on a team, to me. I mean, there's no, listen, hopefully we'll come out, we'll play great early. But this is, you know, as Jeff always said, we need to build the right foundation. You have to start from scratch every year. That's what this league is about. Again, if you watch these games right now, it all gets down to the little things. It's a blown coverage. It's the wrong stance. It's a guy that talks late. It's somebody that doesn't sprint back and they're a step away from where they're supposed to be. And it's the difference between a good half and a bad half, you know? So a lot of it is how quickly things come together. But as much of it, my mindset right now is everybody's got to get in the best shape they can this summer, be working on the right things so their games are improving, and come when we start in September in an incredible place mentally. And then you go from there. The summer is to get ready for training camp. That's what it is. And we need to have a great summer.
All right, thank you very much. The local TVs can station in the practice court. We'll take care of you for one-on-ones, and thank you for coming.